It was clear that Chief Miller and Agent Sterling dared not force an entry. Senator Thorne's estate was a fortress, and his private security force outnumbered their combined units 2-1, creating an impenetrable perimeter around the Georgetown mansion. Elias Vance gave a concise report of the assault on his grandfather's residence. Miller was visibly shaken, relief washing over him only when he learned the immediate danger had passed. This stalemate was untenable. Elias leaned against the armored hood of his truck, his mind racing. He decided they would return the favor of Thorne's earlier aggression with fire, a tactic designed to sow chaos among their ranks. Miller and Sterling, products of established bureaucracy, were bound by procedure and hesitation. Elias was bound by no such constraints. At his side, Marcus immediately understood the unspoken command and dispatched a team to procure accelerants. Miller, his thoughts in turmoil but recognizing the brutal logic of the situation, quietly assigned a few of his officers to guide them. They returned quickly with a truck laden with fuel and dozens of glass growlers. The containers were filled, rags stuffed into their necks, and ignited. Vanguard's strongest operatives then hurled the makeshift firebombs over the high walls. Each projectile shattered on impact, spreading a torrent of flame across the manicured lawns and stone facades. A wave of panicked shouts erupted from within the compound. Elias watched, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable, and ordered them to continue, to encircle the entire estate in a ring of fire. Julian Croft had been observing the unfolding chaos in silence, his hand resting on the hilt of a combat knife strapped to his thigh. A sudden thought pierced his focus. He knew they needed to secure the surrounding streets, to prevent Thorne from slipping away in the confusion. He was intimately aware of the senator's almost supernatural ability to vanish when cornered. Elias's grandfather, Justice Vance, had relayed that task to Chief Miller, who immediately took it upon himself to deploy his men. As dusk settled, the inferno around the estate grew, casting a hellish glow against the darkening sky. The chemical-fueled flames were difficult to extinguish, clinging to rooftops and spreading with terrifying speed. A frantic aide burst into the mansion study. He urged the senator to move to the waterside pavilion for safety. The collection of lobbyists and junior congressmen in the room erupted in a panic. Thorne's estate was vast, and Elias's assault was focused on the outer defenses. The fire was containable, but the study was dangerously close to the main gate. The aide's primary concern was the senator's immediate safety. Thorne's voice was a low growl of frustration. He demanded his men break the siege and stop holding a defensive line. He then asked if there was any word from the team sent to Justice Vance's home. The aide reported no news, but expressed confidence, given their numerical superiority. Thorne just grunted and announced his departure for the pavilion. The officials followed him in a disorganized procession. Halfway there, Thorne stopped. He instructed the others to go on ahead, declaring his intention to personally oversee the defense. He then veered off with his core security team down a different path. Peter Galloway, a lobbyist whose mind worked at a frantic pace, quickly offered his assistance, asking if the senator required his strategic counsel. Thorne's eyes flickered with suspicion, but he quickly suppressed it and dismissed the offer. Once out of sight, an aide rushed to Thorne's side with the real news. The attacks on both Justice Vance's home and the general's convoy had failed. Thorne felt a sharp pain in his chest, stumbling for a moment. He had been banking on capturing the justice to gain leverage, to force a deal with the Sterling family and weather this storm. But with that failure, Franklin Sterling would never align with him now. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped him. Meanwhile, the fire had achieved its purpose, shattering the defensive cordon. Seeing his opportunity, Elias wasted no time. He ordered his men to ram the gate. His authority was so absolute that Agent Sterling, without a second thought, directed his own tactical unit to assist. Elias issued a stern command to Marcus, making it clear that his absolute priority was to protect Julian, to not leave his side for a single instant. Marcus acknowledged with a shouted affirmation. Elias then swung himself onto his motorcycle and roared that the rest were to follow him in. He knew this was a final, desperate stand for Thorn. The network of parasites who owed their wealth and power to him would fight to the death. Julian understood that if he went in, Elias would be distracted, his focus split between the fight and protecting him. The heavy iron gates, reinforced as they were, could not withstand the repeated impacts of the armored ram. As they buckled, Elias's elite riders surged through the breach. Agent Sterling's FBI units followed close behind, their weapons drawn. The courtyard erupted into a symphony of violence. Elias and his riders acted as the tip of the spear, cutting a bloody path through the main yard with brutal efficiency. Just as the momentum was in their favor, a message came through Sterling's earpiece. His own family's estate was under attack. Panic contorting his features, he abandoned everything else, yelling for his units to withdraw and return to his family's aid. A flood of FBI vehicles peeled away from the engagement. One of Elias's men, a man named Caleb, reported the withdrawal. Elias had known from the start that these political allies were unreliable. It was Thorn's predictable last move, a wide-scale counterattack to force his enemies to defend their own homes. He remained unmoved. The order was simple: push forward, kill everything. His 180 riders were a force of nature. Thorn's private security, a mix of mercenaries and enforcers, were no match for disciplined combat veterans. Even with Sterling's forces gone, Elias's unit broke through into the mansion's inner sanctum. Seeing the tide turn so decisively, the mercenaries were the first to break and run, plunging the estate into utter chaos. Amid the pandemonium, a large group of them burst from a rear exit. By then, the entire property was surrounded by Chief Miller's police force. Miller received the report of the breach at the back and rushed to plug the gap. His officers that Thorn might be among the fleeing men. At the front, Julian knew Thorn would never attempt an escape through the main entrance where Elias was. He immediately moved toward the rear of the property. The scene there was a chaotic melee, with Thorn's men desperately trying to break through the police line. And in that swirling mess, Julian saw it. A cluster of dark-suited figures shielding several officials as they tried to escape. This sight energized Chief Miller, who believed the senator was trying to use the officials as cover. He ordered his men to push forward and block the exit at all costs. Julian, however, felt a sinking feeling. Thorn's selfish nature was legendary. He wouldn't risk his own escape for a group of subordinate officials. It was too clumsy, too conspicuous. Then, his eyes locked onto a single figure being dragged along by the security team. Peter Galloway. Julian shouted to Marcus, ordering him to take a team and secure Galloway, convinced the man knew where Thorn had gone. Elias's men were familiar with Galloway. Marcus and 10 others immediately carved a path toward him. Galloway looked up and saw Julian astride a motorcycle, then watched as armored figures cut through the chaos toward him. A sense of stability returned to him. When Marcus reached him and pulled him clear, Galloway immediately screamed the truth. Thorn wasn't there. He had separated from them long ago. It was all a diversion. Julian's heart seized. It was exactly as he had feared. Galloway, now safe and gasping for breath, added that there was a hidden door in the southwest corner of the garden wall. Thorn's fleeting decision not to bring Galloway along had been his greatest mistake. The man was a born survivor, ready to sell out anyone at any time. Julian didn't hesitate. He yelled for Marcus to follow him and sped toward the location Galloway had indicated. He instructed a subordinate to inform Elias. The sky was now a bruised purple, the estate illuminated by fire and filled with the sounds of combat. Elias had pushed deep into the mansion's residential wing. Thorne's entire family was there, dozens of them, old and young, but the senator himself was nowhere to be found. The cowardly old man hadn't even stayed for his own family. He had to have escaped another way. Elias knew he'd been tricked. At the same time, in the southwest corner, a small, half-height door hidden behind a thick curtain of ivy was pushed open. It led to a narrow service tunnel that emerged next to a storm drain. The murky water was only knee-deep. A short wade across the channel led to a street where a black town car was waiting. The forces surrounding the estate were focused on the main roads. No one had paid any attention to the overgrown ivy wall. Thorne urged his men to hurry. The plan was to get out of the city and head to a private airfield in Virginia. His eldest son kept looking back, murmuring about his mother and the children. Thorne snapped at him that there was no time. A dozen security men escorted the pair across the water to the waiting car and its escort of armed motorcyclists. The convoy sped off into the night. Virginia was where the Thorne dynasty had its roots. If all else failed, he could flee the country from there, preserving his wealth and the possibility of a return. As for the family left behind, their fate was no longer his concern. Back at the Sterling estate, when Agent Sterling arrived with his units, Franklin Sterling's own security detail was already driving off the last of Thorne's attackers. Franklin, the Speaker of the House, expressed his regrets for being late. The Sterling family was overcome with gratitude. They were unaware that Franklin had waited, watching the tides of battle, only intervening when he was certain Thorne had no chance of recovery. Justice Vance was a man of integrity, unlikely to form a political alliance. The Sterlings were a far better choice for a partner in the new power structure. As for Franklin's past ambitions to usurp the Sterlings, without Thorne to corroborate any claims, it was merely hearsay. Today's rescue would ensure the Sterlings' loyalty, regardless of any future rumors. Franklin Sterling was a master of calculation. Through the night, an unremarkable town car, surrounded by dark-clad motorcyclists, raced toward the city's southern exit. The guards at the checkpoint had been bribed. Once they were out of the city, they would be safe. Thorne sat in the back, rubbing his hands together anxiously. The distant glow of fires confirmed that the chaos was still raging. He told himself no one would have noticed his departure. Then he heard it, the roar of high-performance engines. A group of riders was approaching with terrifying speed. The head of his security detail ordered half the men to stay behind and intercept them. The pursuers were armed with military-grade rifles, their presence exuding a lethal competence. The man in the lead wore lightweight silver body armor. Even at full speed, he drew a bow, loosing an arrow that found its mark, taking one of Thorne's riders down. It was a strange, archaic choice of weapon, but devastatingly effective. Julian's eyes burned with a singular, all-consuming purpose. He had to catch him. He had waited too long for this day. Just as Elias had always feared, Julian would not wait for someone else to deliver justice. He would take Thorne's life himself, even if it cost him his own. The blood of his family demanded a reckoning. Marcus knew he couldn't let Julian go alone and stayed glued to his side. Thorne's men fired wildly behind them, but Julian, hunched low over his motorcycle, weaved through the sporadic gunfire. The bikes he and Elias rode were custom-built military-spec machines, not the stock models Thorne's men used. Their powerful engines gave them a massive advantage, and they quickly closed the distance. Marcus and his men struggled to keep pace, their hearts pounding with fear for Julian's safety. He yelled for Julian to let him take the lead, swinging his own vehicle to intercept an attacker, the impact sending both bikes skidding across the asphalt. The deserted D.C. streets became the stage for a life-or-death chase. Thorne's security chief knew they couldn't shake their pursuers and made the decision to stand and fight, leaving only 2 men to escort the car. But he hadn't counted on Julian's uncanny aim. As the car took a sharp turn, Julian raised his bow again. The arrow struck one of the car's tires, causing it to swerve violently and crash into a storefront. Seeing the car disabled, the remaining security men charged at Julian with a suicidal fury. He dropped the bow, drew his knife, and met their charge. He was a strategist, not a trained fighter, and he was quickly overwhelmed. A blade came within an inch of his throat. A clang of metal echoed as Marcus's own knife parried the blow. Marcus roared, his voice thick with terror. He knew what Elias's rage would be like if anything happened to Julian. The thought was more terrifying than any battlefield. Thorne and his son crawled from the wreckage. Aided by a security man, they tried to mount one of the motorcycles to escape. The street was a whirlwind of combat. Thorne, his leg injured, limped pathetically, a shadow of his former self, driven by the singular instinct to survive. If he escaped the city, finding him would be impossible. Marcus and his men engaged the bodyguards, and Julian, ignoring his own safety, charged toward Thorne. He could not let him escape. Absolutely not. The memory of his family's ruin was a fire in his soul. Thorne's rise from a minor political family was built on corruption and bribery. The destruction of the Croft dynasty had been a brutal message to the other established families, a demonstration of his power. Julian's family had been left in unmarked graves, their legacy erased. Who could possibly understand the depth of that pain? When one of his men finally reached Elias and told him Julian was pursuing Thorne, Elias felt his world tilt. He knew Julian would throw his own life away for this. He spurred his bike, the engine screaming, racing past the bodies of Thorne's men. His lungs burned. He wished he had wings. On the long street leading to the southern exit, he saw them. His men locked in combat and Julian fighting desperately. As Thorne tried to climb onto a motorcycle, Julian lunged with his knife. At that exact moment, a silenced shot rang out. An arrow from the shadows struck Julian in the back, piercing his light armor. Julian! Elias's roar was inhuman. The wound was deep. Pain, sharp and blinding, radiated through Julian's body, yet it was nothing compared to the agony of losing his family. As if feeling nothing, his movements didn't falter. His knife plunged into Thorne's back. Thorne's hands, scrabbling at the motorcycle, went still. Blood seeped through the entry point of the arrow, staining the silver armor a brilliant crimson. Elias became a primal force of fury, his eyes blazing. His riders surged forward, annihilating the remaining security. Elias dismounted, took a heavy blade from one of his men, and cleaved the still-breathing Thorne in two. He then hurled the blade, impaling Thorne's son against the wreckage of the car. It was over. The vengeance. The nightmares of his family being dragged away. It was all over. A ringing filled Julian's ears, leaving only the sound of his own ragged breathing. He saw Elias, and suddenly his strength gave out. He started to fall. Elias caught him, pulling him into his arms. Blood dripped from the arrow shaft, forming a dark pool on the pavement. "Get us to the justice's house," Elias commanded, lifting Julian as if he weighed nothing. He mounted his bike, holding Julian tightly against his chest. Julian tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth. He couldn't breathe. The sight of that crimson blood was a knife twisting in Elias's own heart. He felt himself losing control. He turned to Caleb, his voice a serrated edge, no longer trying to contain the violence within him. Take a team to the Thorn estate. The entire family. No one leaves. A debt of blood would be paid in blood. The half-moon was veiled in a bloody haze. It was a sleepless night for the city. Get Dr. Miles. Get him here now. The justice's residence, already in disarray, descended into chaos. Elias's barely controlled rage terrified everyone. A doctor from the household staff arrived. In the room, Julian gasped in Elias's arms, his breathing short and pained. The lung was hit. The doctor cut away the armor around the arrow. The entire arrowhead was embedded deep in the bone. The doctor's face went white. Elias's eyes were bloodshot. He fought to control the molten fury inside him. He asked through clenched teeth if it could be removed. The doctor fell to his knees, admitting he didn't dare. Removing an arrow that deep in the lung was a death sentence. Elias closed his eyes. He asked when Dr. Miles would arrive. Chief Miller replied that his residence wasn't far. The room was thick with the smell of blood. No one saw Elias's hands shaking. He lowered his head, resting his cheek against Julian's sweat-dampened forehead, murmuring reassurances to Julian and to himself. He hadn't realized until that moment the profound depth of his feelings, the sheer terror of losing him. Miller saw it all, and the rumors he had heard from the Northern Territories suddenly clicked into place. A commotion at the door announced the arrival of Dr. Leonard Miles. He was in his civilian clothes, followed by his son, Leo. Justice Vance, his face etched with worry, ushered them in. Dr. Miles ignored everyone, going straight to the wound. He palpated the area around it, then checked Julian's pulse. His diagnosis was swift and grim. The arrowhead had to come out immediately, or the internal bleeding would be fatal. Elias's entire body went rigid. Dr. Miles turned to his son and simply said, "Scalpels." Leo opened a medical kit, revealing a set of precision surgical tools. He lit a small, portable sterilizer. As the blades heated to a glow, Julian coughed violently, spitting up a mouthful of blood. Elias's face went pale as he tried to wipe it away. Dr. Miles intervened, turning Julian onto his side. He explained that the blood had to come out or it would block his airway. Elias understood, but the tension was unbearable. Dr. Miles began to cut. The room was utterly silent. His hands, though aged, were rock-steady as he carefully excised the tissue around the arrowhead. Elias watched, unblinking. The thumb-sized piece of metal was finally removed and dropped into a brass bowl with a soft clink. The doctor then cleaned the wound, removed bone fragments with forceps, and began to suture. Suddenly, Elias noticed Julian had gone still. He touched his face, calling his name. Dr. Miles barked at him not to let him sleep. Elias shook him, but there was no response. Panicked, Dr. Miles took out a set of acupuncture needles, an old habit from his studies abroad, and pricked Julian's fingertips. Julian jolted awake, coughing up more blood, this time frothy. Elias cleaned his mouth, but more blood immediately trickled from the corner. The wound was closed, but the blood in the lungs still needed to be cleared. Dr. Miles continued to use pressure points to stimulate the coughing. Elias couldn't watch. He walked to the door, heard the wrenching coughs, and turned back, repeating the cycle several times. After one particularly violent spasm, Julian's breath caught with a sudden, deep inhale. He was going to live. Dr. Miles's face was grim but focused. Julian's breathing visibly eased. Elias felt like he could breathe again, too. He formally thanked the doctor, promising a great reward. Dr. Miles, seeing the raw emotion in the young man's eyes, was impressed by his devotion. He advised them not to move Julian, lest the lung collapse again. Elias sat on the edge of the bed, not daring to stir. Leo was sent with a prescription. Dr. Miles predicted a high fever and prepared medication in advance. He needed some specific supplies from his own clinic, and Elias sent Marcus to escort him, stressing the need for speed. Sure enough, within an hour, Julian was burning with fever. Fortunately, he was conscious enough to swallow the medicine. 2 doses later, the fever broke. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. It was late. Justice Vance and Chief Miller retired to an adjacent room. The residents finally settled into a quiet hum, but the city's turmoil was far from over. Around 3 a.m., news spread like wildfire that the senator's entire family had been systematically eliminated by a team of black-clad operators. The city was in shock. The assassins vanished into the night without a trace. A young aide, Luke, burst in to find the justice, his face pale. He reported that the Thorne family had been massacred. Justice Vance and Chief Miller were stunned. They knew Elias's men were the only ones capable of such a thing. The official condemnation hadn't even been issued yet. How could he do this? Even if found guilty, Thorne's family didn't deserve execution. The justice, his chest tight with anger, demanded to see Elias. Under the law, the families of convicted traitors were, at worst, exiled. This was a massacre. Elias was gently wiping sweat from Julian's brow. Julian was sleeping fitfully. When the butler summoned him, he left Marcus to stand watch and went to the next room. The room was brightly lit. As Elias entered, the 3 men stared. In the chaos of the medical emergency, no one had noticed Elias's clothes were soaked in blood. His sudden appearance, combined with the lingering fury in his eyes, was deeply unsettling. They felt, for the first time, the raw, lethal aura of the man who had tamed the northern wilds. This wasn't a politician. This was a predator. His grandfather asked him what this was about. Elias just picked a chair and sat. Miller paused, then quietly sent someone to fetch a change of clothes. Much of the blood on Elias was Julian's, the source of his rage. Miller asked about Julian's condition. Elias's voice was flat when he replied that he was stable for now. Silence returned until Justice Vance broke it. His voice was stern. Elias, how could you wipe out the Thorne family? Thorne was dead. The debt was paid. The country had laws. He accused Elias of acting like a tyrant, asking how he expected to function in a civilized world. It was a heartfelt plea, not from a justice, but from a grandfather. Law and order were the foundation of the nation. Elias's actions were beyond the pale. Elias's eyes were like deep, calm water. Grandfather, he said, his voice even, you should be grateful I didn't bring my entire force to this city. Then it would have been more than just the Thorns. Miller nearly dropped his glass. Absurd. The justice snapped. You would bring a private army into the capital? That's insurrection. He was genuinely afraid. He reminded Elias of his duty, of the rules. But in Elias's eyes, the rules were a joke. Grandfather, he said calmly, when Thorne destroyed the Croft family, did anyone stand up for the law then? He was a backwater politician who became one of the most powerful men in the country. Were there any rules to constrain him? The question silenced the room. In the face of absolute power, rules were meaningless. This country had been rotting from the inside for years. You want me to follow the rules? Elias swept his gaze over the three men. Can rules stop a foreign threat? Can they reclaim lost territory? Can they protect people? In a world like this, only the sword can hold the line. For the first time, Arthur Vance felt a flicker of doubt. What Elias said was true. This was a chaotic era, and the principles he had dedicated his life to seemed unable to stop the decay. Elias then advised his grandfather that if he wanted to save the country, he needed to seize power himself. With Thorn gone, there was a vacuum. The Justice had the reputation and the support to consolidate control. The Vance family could rule from the inside, while Elias secured the borders from the outside. Miller and Luke were electrified by the idea, but the Justice was aghast. He accused Elias of trying to make him betray his principles. He had spent his life as a loyal servant of the state. He waved Elias away, unable to speak further. Elias rose and left without another word. Arthur Vance was afraid that if they talked any longer, his lifelong convictions might shatter. Outside, his lieutenants were waiting. He ordered them to keep a low profile at their safe house. They would return north as soon as Julian was stable. Caleb asked if they needed to post a guard. Elias just scoffed. The other families had gotten what they wanted from Thorn's fall. They wouldn't risk starting another fight now. And he knew his grandfather, for all his harsh words, understood on some level that the world had changed, and old rules no longer applied. Back in the room, he checked Julian's forehead. In the haze of pain and semi-consciousness, Julian dreamed. He saw his family's Virginia estate in its prime, a place of laughter and light. He saw the slow decay of the nation's politics, the rise of corruption, the fall of good men. His family's destruction heralded the end of an era. The dream offered no answer as to who would fill the power vacuum now. He slowly opened his eyes to find Elias watching him, his handsome face etched with a dark intensity. "Were you born just to make me angry?" Elias asked, his voice low. Julian tried to speak, but his throat was raw. Elias carefully helped him sip some water, his touch surprisingly gentle despite the simmering anger in his eyes. "Don't be angry," Julian rasped. How could he not be? Elias's voice was cold. He recounted Julian's recklessness, taking so few men to chase Thorn, not even waiting for him. He reminded him how close he had come to death. "You don't care about your own life, but did you ever think about me?" Julian froze. He had never heard Elias speak with such a chilling lack of emotion. He was truly, deeply furious. Tears welled in Julian's eyes and slipped down his temples. He reached out and clutched Elias's sleeve, a gesture both stubborn and fragile. "If that had been a blade instead of an arrow, you would be dead. Do you understand that?" Elias's voice had softened, losing its icy edge. Julian clung to his sleeve, and Elias placed his hand under Julian's cheek, letting him rest against it. Julian knew he had been wrong. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was terrified of leaving Elias. Faced with Julian's stubborn vulnerability, Elias's anger melted away, replaced by a deep, aching tenderness. He gently wiped the tears from Julian's eyes. "Thorn is dead," he said softly. "His family is gone. It's over. You can let it go now." The story of the Thorn family's corruption was a long and sordid one, built on graft, bribery, and murder, culminating in their seizure of power. Thorn had ambitions of making his family a permanent fixture, second only to the presidency itself. But Elias's blade had ended that dream. Thorn had died in a pool of his own blood, his eyes wide with disbelief, unrepentant to the last. the chaos in D.C. was not over. With Thorn gone, others moved to fill the void. Franklin Sterling and his allies began a swift and silent purge of Thorn's remaining network. Luke reported this to the Justice, worried about Sterling's ambition. He noted how Sterling had stayed out of the fight until the outcome was certain, and yet the other families were now aligning with him. Sterling had played the long game and won. Vultures, Justice Vance said, his voice weary. He knew what they were all after. He would continue to fight for the rule of law, to defend the nation's integrity, but it was a lonely path. Meanwhile, Julian's fever came and went. Elias stayed by his side constantly. By morning, the fever had broken for good, and Elias finally allowed himself to sleep for a short while at his side. Justice Vance and Chief Miller had already left for a day of tense meetings and political maneuvering. The morning's news was filled with reports of the previous night's events, but key details were missing. Thorn's death was ruled the result of an internal power struggle. His family's massacre was attributed to unknown assailants. The elite operators who had taken them out were ghosts. No one in power was asking too many questions. Those who knew the truth, like Franklin Sterling, had gotten what they wanted and had no desire to provoke Elias Vance. The Vances, of course, said nothing. A few days later, Julian was recovering well. Elias told him about his grandfather's refusal to seize power. Julian wasn't surprised. The Justice was a man of principle who would only accept power if it were given freely, not taken through conspiracy. He was a man who wanted to be remembered as a great statesman, not a kingmaker. In the current political climate, it was a path fraught with difficulty. Elias admitted his deep respect for his grandfather's integrity. 3 days after that, the government officially released a summary of Thorn's crimes: treason, murder, conspiracy, corruption. The list was long and shocking. The late emperor's decree posthumously exonerated Thorn's victims, including the Croft family. Their titles and estates were restored. With the seat of power empty, the Senate, with a gentle nudge from key players, nominated Justice Arthur Vance to a special oversight position, effectively making him the most powerful man in the government. The Vance family was now at the pinnacle of D.C. power, and the Justice would rule according to his principles. 10 days later, Julian was well enough to walk. He was required to go to the White House to formally accept the restoration of his family's honor. Early one morning, he prepared to leave. Elias stood behind him, adjusting the formal tie on his crisp suit. It was a dark, elegant color that suited Julian's refined features perfectly. Elias leaned in and kissed him, a long, lingering kiss that left them both breathless. He announced he was coming with him. With the immediate crisis over, Elias was feeling bold. Julian immediately protested, worried that some of the officials might recognize him and try to press charges for his unsanctioned military actions. Elias waved it off. He had an old government ID with him under an alias from a time he did consulting work. He would go as a junior security attaché, a rank that Lowe wouldn't be granted access to the Oval Office. He would wait outside. Julian sighed, knowing it was useless to argue with Elias's particular brand of stubbornness. He pointed out that several people would recognize him anyway. Elias just grinned. The ones who mattered wouldn't dare expose him. He hadn't come all this way to not take a look inside the White House. The day was bright and clear. A black car dropped them at the gates. Julian's appointment was after the morning press briefing, so they had time. They passed through security and walked across the north lawn toward the West Wing. Elias looked around, impressed by the history of the place. Julian, walking slowly to accommodate his healing injury, provided quiet commentary. They reached the West Wing and Julian was soon called in. He entered the Oval Office, his calm demeanor drawing the attention of everyone present. Rumors about him had been swirling for weeks. The last scion of a ruined dynasty. A man who had spent a decade in exile, now whispered to be the true power behind the formidable Elias Vance. Those who had mocked his memory were now silent. His presence confirmed their fears. If Vance was the sword, this man was the mind that guided it. After the formalities were over, Julian exited the office. He was immediately approached by old family friends and former colleagues, all offering congratulations. As they crowded around, a tall, imposing figure stepped up to stand beside Julian. The man's presence was so intense it silenced the chatter. One official finally asked who he was. Captain Lee, Vanguard Solutions. Elias replied smoothly. Assigned to Mr. Croft's personal security. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. This confirmed everything. He was a key figure in Vance's organization. Only Julian was rolling his eyes internally. He knew this would happen. Franklin Sterling, the newly powerful speaker, paused as he was leaving. He was a large man in the prime of his life. He looked Elias up and down. Elias stared right back. Julian, fearing Elias might say something outrageous, quickly made the introduction. Elias gave a stiff nod, his posture radiating a barely contained power that his simple suit could not conceal. Even Sterling was taken aback. If the bodyguard was this formidable, what must Vance himself be like? Elias, with a completely straight face, began to praise his boss, describing General Vance as an unparalleled hero, a patriot who had single-handedly secured the nation's northern border. He laid it on so thick that Julian almost choked, trying not to laugh. The other officials who recognized Elias looked on with expressions of utter disbelief. Even Franklin Sterling was left speechless. After that, no one else approached them. The bodyguard had left a lasting impression. These men from the wild northern territories were a different breed entirely. That Elias got a severe lecture from his grandfather later was another story. The next day, their business in D.C. was concluded. Their return trip was scheduled. They left as they came, in a convoy of unassuming vehicles. Elias rode with Julian, letting one of his men drive. From a parked car on an overpass, Peter Galloway watched them go. He had waited, hoping Elias would contact him, offer him a place. But the call never came. He was, once again, a tool to be discarded. A bitter resentment hardened his features. He had made the right choice, he told himself, by throwing his lot in with Franklin Sterling. Justice Vance was old. His principled rule wouldn't last forever. Sterling was the future. Dr. Leonard Miles received a letter delivered by a private courier. It contained a formal offer from General Elias Vance, expressing his admiration for the Miles family's medical expertise. He was inviting a skilled physician from their family to establish and run a new state-of-the-art medical facility in his territory in Montana, with the rank and salary of a senior government official. He added that his convoy would wait for 3 days at a rendezvous point outside the city. Leo Miles was immediately intrigued. As the youngest son, he wouldn't inherit his father's prestigious position. His options were a private practice or a low-ranking military doctor position. His father looked at him, his expression full of love and concern. He told Leo that he considered him the most talented of his children, and that this Elias Vance seemed like a man of honor. It was a good opportunity. Leo agreed. 3 days later, he met the convoy. The men were rough, teasing him about his youthful appearance, but Julian intervened with quiet authority. Elias, ever the pragmatist, simply told him to get in a vehicle. The convoy moved on. The journey back was slow, to accommodate Julian's recovery. It took them over a week to reach the vast, open landscapes of Montana, after the oppressive, humid confines of D.C. The clean, dry air was a relief. The territory was thriving, a stark contrast to the drought-stricken central states. Their main city, Jinyang, was bustling. It wasn't D.C., but it was vibrant and prosperous. Leo was stunned. He had expected a rugged frontier outpost, not this. Elias immediately gifted him a large house and a generous stipend to get started. Back in Jinyang, Elias convened a meeting with his commanders. The main issue was Colonel Shaw, the commander of the Federal Army base, Fort Sheridan. He was a Thorn loyalist. A few months ago, a delegation from D.C. had visited the base. The next day, their bodies were found hanging from the walls. Since then, the base had been on lockdown. 10 days ago, their intelligence reported that Shaw was in secret communication with a foreign power. Elias informed his men of Thorn's death. Now Shaw's actions made sense. Without his patron, he was a dead man walking. They decided to wait and watch. The most pressing issue was recruitment. Their forces had grown to over 120,000. Elias wanted to expand to 150,000 by year's end. The influx of refugees from the drought-stricken states provided a steady stream of willing recruits. That night, Elias found Julian still buried in paperwork. He took the files from his hands, telling him his body needed rest. He insisted that Julian learn to delegate. As their territory grew, he couldn't do everything himself. Julian conceded the point. Later, in their room, Elias brought up his plan to take control of a rich silver mine in the mountains, a mine previously controlled by Thorn. Julian cautioned him not to get his hopes up. Thorn had likely exploited it to near exhaustion. Elias just smiled, a glint in his eye. He had a feeling. The next day, Elias took 5,000 men to the mountain. The takeover was swift and bloodless. The conditions at the mine were horrific. The miners were treated like slaves, living in squalor. The refining process polluted the local water supply. Elias was grim. He ordered the old management executed and his own people to take over. The first priority wasn't to restart mining, but to clean the place up and build proper housing and waste management systems to treat the workers like human beings. Meanwhile, Julian finally met with Leo Miles. He formally offered him the position of Director of Public Health for the entire territory, a cabinet-level position. He tasked him with building a public medical system from the ground up, starting with a central hospital and a network of clinics. Leo, who thought he was just being hired as a military surgeon, was overwhelmed. This was a chance to build something truly meaningful. A public notice went out announcing examinations for doctors and nurses, with generous government salaries. The entire region's medical community was thrown into a frenzy of excitement. In the high plains of summer, news finally came. Colonel Shaw had officially defected. A contingent of foreign soldiers had entered Fort Sheridan. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The fort was a formidable position, but it could not be allowed to stand as an enemy foothold. A direct assault would be suicide. In the war room, surrounded by maps and models, Elias laid out his plan. Besiege the fort to lure out the enemy's reinforcements. He knew from intercepted communications that the D.C. government had cut off supplies to the base months ago. Shaw had defected out of desperation. The fort was starving. The plan was audacious. 60,000 infantry would surround the fort, cutting it off completely. 40,000 cavalry and mobile infantry, led by his best field commander, a man named Brody, would lie in wait for the relief force. That night, the vanguard army moved. By dawn, Fort Sheridan was surrounded. Shaw, seeing the endless lines of soldiers, was thrown into a panic. He had been promised supplies that had never arrived. Now he was trapped. The foreign commander, a man named Ulan, tried to reassure him that help was on its way. But Ulan didn't know the full picture. His own government was stretched thin, fighting on another front. They had only sent a small force to secure the base. The promised relief army was a patchwork of allied militias, not the elite troops they needed. When Ulan's father, the general in charge of the relief force, received the news, he was forced to cobble together an army of 60,000 to break the siege. He faced Brody's 40,000 elite vanguard soldiers on the open plain. The battle was short and brutal. Vanguard's discipline and superior equipment tore through the disorganized militia. As the main battle raged, Elias sent his personal guard, 4,000 of his very best riders led by Marcus, on a wide flanking maneuver to strike the enemy command. Ulan's father was caught completely by surprise and was killed in the fighting. The victory was total. The news spread like wildfire. Marcus rode a circuit around the besieged fort, Ulan's father's head impaled on a spear. The morale inside Fort Sheridan shattered. Ulan was devastated. Shaw was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Elias then began the final phase of his plan. He ordered his men to set up massive field kitchens just outside the range of the fort's guns. They began to roast entire steers, the smell of cooking meat wafting over the walls to the starving soldiers inside. Then came the broadcast messages. General Vance gives his word. Surrender and you will not be harmed. You will be given 3 months severance pay and a transport home. Any man from this territory who wishes to join Vanguard will be accepted, and will still receive his pay. That night, the desertions began. First a trickle, then a flood. Men rappelled down the walls, surrendering to the Vanguard patrols. Elias was true to his word. They were fed, paid, and sent on their way. Within a day, Shaw's army had evaporated. His own men, finally pushed to the breaking point, mutinied, killed him, and opened the gates. Fort Sheridan had fallen. When the news reached D.C., the Senate erupted in outrage. Not at Shaw's treason, but at Elias. They accused him of orchestrating the entire affair, of slandering the federal army to justify his seizure of the base. The Secretary of Defense and the Treasury Secretary, both Sterling appointees, were the loudest, as Elias's report had explicitly blamed them for cutting off the army's supplies. They knew it was true. It had been Sterling's plan to let the two northern powers weaken each other. But they never imagined Shaw would be foolish enough to turn traitor. Enough! Justice Vance's voice cut through the noise. He announced a full investigation into the Treasury's accounts. The Treasury Secretary nearly fainted. The justice knew Elias wouldn't lie about something so easily verifiable. The federal government had lost its last foothold in the north. They had no way to control Elias Vance anymore. With the northern border secure, a strange peace settled over the territory. It was another year of bumper harvests. The fields were golden with wheat. Life returned to a semblance of normality. With their major goals accomplished, Elias and Julian began to focus on the future. They brought their 2 young wards, one Elias's nephew, the other Julian's, to live with them in Jinyang, to be raised as the future leaders of their growing domain. The boys were enrolled in a strict regimen of martial training in the morning and political science with Julian in the afternoon. The once quiet general's residence was now filled with the energy of youth. One autumn evening, Elias watched the 2 boys sparring in the courtyard. They had grown leaner, tougher, but their spirits were bright. Julian came to stand beside him. "You're too hard on them," he said softly. Elias put an arm around him. "The world is hard," he replied. "They need to be harder." He knew he was building more than just a safe territory. He was building a dynasty. And these two boys, his nephew and Julian's, were its foundation. That night, as the cold autumn wind blew outside, the house was warm. For the first time in a long time, both men felt a sense of profound and lasting peace. The war for revenge was over. The struggle to build a future had just begun.